Commander Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue-green world spin lazily below. Earth looked so peaceful from space, its white clouds swirling over vast oceans. The planet seemed almost too quiet, too simple for a species that claimed to rule an entire world. "Captain, the preliminary scans are complete," reported his tactical officer, a tall Vorthak with 4 arms and silver skin. "The humans appear to have basic space travel, but their weapons are primitive. Chemical rockets, nuclear warheads, and simple projectile weapons. Nothing that could threaten our shields." Zektar nodded, his 3 eyes focusing on the holographic display. The Galactic Council had sent his fleet here as punishment, really. Earth was considered the least valuable target in this sector, home to a species so new to space that they barely qualified as a threat. Other commanders got to conquer rich mining worlds or strategic outposts. He got stuck with a backwater planet full of bipedal mammals. "What about their military strength?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Divided into nearly 200 separate nations, Captain. They fight among themselves constantly. Our intelligence suggests they've been at war with each other for their entire recorded history. They can't even unite their own planet, let alone mount any serious resistance against us." The bridge crew chuckled at this. The idea of a species so fractured that they couldn't achieve basic planetary unity seemed almost comical. In the 3,000 years since the Vorthak had joined the Galactic Council, they had never encountered such a primitive political structure. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface," announced the communications officer. "It appears to be coming from multiple locations simultaneously. They're using something called the United Nations." "Put it through," Zektar ordered, settling back in his command chair. This should be amusing. The main screen flickered, and suddenly he was looking at a small conference room filled with humans. They were remarkably similar to each other, despite coming from different regions of their planet. 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, and skin tones that varied from pale to dark brown. So uniform, so simple. An elderly human male with gray hair stepped forward. "I am Secretary General Chen of the United Nations. We represent the people of Earth. We have detected your ships in our system and request peaceful dialogue." Zektar couldn't help but be amused by the formal tone. These creatures actually thought they were in a position to negotiate. "I am Commander Zektar of the Vorthak Imperial Fleet. By order of the Galactic Council, your world has been selected for incorporation into our empire. You will surrender immediately and prepare for occupation." The humans looked at each other, having quick whispered conversations. Secretary General Chen turned back to the screen. "Commander, we appreciate your position, but we cannot simply surrender our world. Perhaps we could discuss terms that would benefit both our peoples." "There are no terms," Zektar replied flatly. "You have 48 of your hours to begin evacuation of your major population centers. Our ground forces will land at that time. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. This transmission is over." As the screen went dark, Zektar turned to his officers. "Begin standard invasion protocols. Position the fleet for orbital bombardment of their military installations. Deploy advanced scout ships to map their major cities. This should be over within a week." What Zektar didn't know was that the human transmission had been broadcast from a secret facility deep underground. As soon as the connection ended, Secretary General Chen turned to the assembled military leaders from every major nation on Earth. "Gentlemen, ladies, you heard the alien commander. We have 48 hours. Chen's voice was steady, but his eyes held a fire that spoke of determination. "For the first time in human history, our entire species faces the same enemy. I'm activating the emergency defense protocol." General Morrison from the United States stepped forward. "Sir, our conventional weapons won't scratch their shields. Our satellites detected energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "Then we don't fight them conventionally," replied General Volkov from Russia. "We fight them the way humans have always fought when faced with superior forces. We make them regret ever coming here." Around the table, military leaders from China, India, Britain, France, Germany, Japan, and dozens of other nations nodded grimly. Ancient rivalries and political differences seemed suddenly trivial when faced with extinction. "What about civilian evacuation?" asked General Kim from South Korea. "No time," Chen said quietly. "And nowhere to run. They have ships in orbit. Our only choice is to make our stand here on our home ground. We need to show them that conquering Earth will cost them more than they ever imagined." As the meeting broke up, emergency communication systems around the world came alive. Military commanders who had been enemies just hours before began coordinating their forces. Every submarine disappeared beneath the waves. Every mobile missile platform went into hiding. Special forces units melted into the forests, mountains, and urban landscapes they knew better than any alien ever could. In space, Commander Zektar was reviewing the invasion plans with his staff. Their largest cities appear to be these coastal areas, he said, pointing to the holographic map. New York, London, Tokyo, Shanghai. We'll establish beachheads there and work inward. Standard doctrine calls for making examples of the major population centers to break their will to resist. Sir, our scouts report unusual activity on the surface, the tactical officer interrupted. Military units are dispersing rather than concentrating for defense. It's almost like they're trying to hide. Zektar laughed. Let them hide. It will only delay the inevitable. Fear makes all species act irrationally. Begin the countdown to invasion. Tomorrow we'll show these humans what happens when a primitive species challenges the might of the Galactic Council. As the alien fleet prepared for what they assumed would be an easy conquest, 6 billion humans went about what might be their last normal evening. Children were tucked into bed, families shared quiet dinners, and lovers held each other close. But in military bases around the world, in government bunkers, and in the hearts of ordinary people who had never thought about war before today, something was awakening. It was something the aliens had never encountered in their 3,000 years of conquest. It was the thing that had driven humans to survive ice ages, to cross oceans in wooden boats, to climb mountains just because they were there. It was the stubborn, fierce refusal to give up that had made humanity the apex predator, on a world full of creatures bigger, stronger, and better armed than they were. The aliens thought they were about to conquer a weak, divided species. They had no idea they were about to face humanity's greatest strength, the terrible unity that came when someone threatened everything they loved. The first Vorthak dropships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their heat shields glowing orange as they cut through the morning sky over major cities. Commander Zektar watched from his flagship as dozens of his assault craft approached their targets. Everything was proceeding exactly according to plan. Landing zone secured, Commander, reported Captain Thex from the lead dropship approaching New York. No visible resistance. The humans appear to have evacuated their largest population centers as ordered. We're proceeding to establish our command posts. Zektar nodded with satisfaction. Begin Phase 2. Secure their government buildings and broadcast our terms for surrender. The sooner we establish control, the sooner we can move on to more important assignments. What the Vorthak didn't realize was that the empty cities were exactly what the humans had planned. As the alien dropships touched down in Times Square, Trafalgar Square, Red Square, and other symbolic locations around the world, hidden cameras recorded everything. Every movement, every weapon signature, every tactical formation was being analyzed by military experts in underground bunkers. Colonel Sarah Martinez crouched in a subway tunnel beneath Manhattan, watching her tablet as alien soldiers emerged from their ships. Look at how they move, she whispered to her team of Navy SEALs. Heavy armor, energy weapons, but they're following standard formation patterns. They expect us to fight like everyone else they've conquered. Through her earpiece, she could hear similar reports from special forces teams around the world. The aliens were powerful, but they were also predictable. They had conquered so many worlds using the same tactics that they couldn't imagine facing an enemy who refused to play by their rules. Phoenix Base, this is Shadowhawk. Martinez spoke quietly into her radio. Targets are in position. Beginning Operation Mosquito Bite. 500 feet above her, Vorthak soldiers were setting up a command post in the empty shell of Grand Central Station. They worked efficiently, their forearms allowing them to handle equipment with impressive speed. Their energy shields shimmered around them like heat mirages, deflecting the few pieces of debris that fell from the damaged ceiling. This is too easy, muttered Sergeant Krall to his squad leader. Where are all the humans? Intelligence said this city had 8 million inhabitants, probably hiding in terror, his squad leader replied. You know how primitive species react to superior technology. They'll come out begging for mercy soon enough. That's when the first shot rang out. The high-powered rifle bullet, fired from a building 8 blocks away, struck Krall's shield and ricocheted harmlessly into the wall. But it served its purpose. Every Vorthak head turned toward the source of the shot, their weapons raised and ready. Contact. Single sniper bearing northwest, the squad leader shouted. Moving to engage. Half the squad moved toward the building where the shot had originated, their heavy boots echoing through the empty streets. They moved in perfect formation, just as their training demanded, just as the humans had hoped they would. The explosion came from beneath their feet. The humans had spent months preparing the city's infrastructure, placing charges in key locations throughout the subway system. As the aliens stepped over a carefully marked section of street, Martinez triggered the detonator. The blast sent 3 Vorthak soldiers flying through the air, their shields overloaded and sparking. They weren't dead, their armor was too good for that, but they were injured and confused. More importantly, they were separated from their main force. Ambush.
Multiple contacts.
The squad leader screamed into his communicator, but even as he spoke, more shots rang out from different directions. Human snipers positioned on rooftops throughout the city had opened fire simultaneously. None of their bullets could penetrate Vorthak's shields, but that wasn't the point. "Sir, we're taking fire from at least 12 different positions," reported Captain Thex to Commander Zektar. "The humans appear to be using guerrilla tactics. They're not trying to hold territory, they're just trying to harass our forces." Zektar frowned at his tactical display. Similar reports were coming in from landing zones around the world. The humans weren't fighting like a proper military force. They weren't defending their cities or trying to protect their infrastructure. Instead, they seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at once. "Deploy the heavy combat units," he ordered. "Show these primitives what real firepower looks like." The Vorthak heavy units were impressive. 12-foot-tall mechs armed with plasma cannons and protected by shields that could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. They strode through the empty streets like mechanical gods, their sensors scanning for targets. But the humans had vanished again. Underground. Martinez and her team were already 3 miles away, moving through service tunnels that the aliens didn't even know existed. Around the world, similar teams were conducting hit-and-run attacks, striking quickly and then disappearing into the maze of sewers, subways, and maintenance tunnels that ran beneath every major city. "This is Unit 7, came a voice over the Vorthak command frequency. "We've secured the target building, but the sniper is gone. We found the rifle, but no sign of the shooter. Unit 12 here. We're in pursuit of contacts in the underground tunnels, but they seem to know these passages better than our maps indicate." Unit 3 reporting. "Our sensors are picking up movement throughout the city, but we can't get a lock on any targets. It's like they're ghosts." Commander Zektar listened to the reports with growing frustration. This wasn't how invasions were supposed to go. When the Vorthak conquered a world, the enemy either fought heroically and died quickly, or surrendered immediately to avoid destruction. They didn't just disappear. "Sir," his intelligence officer spoke up nervously, "I'm analyzing the human tactics. This doesn't match any of our previous conquest scenarios. They're not trying to win battles or defend positions. They're just trying to make occupation as difficult as possible." "That's impossible," Zektar snapped. "Every species fights for something. Territory, resources, population centers. What are the humans fighting for?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Every television, radio, and internet connection still functioning on Earth suddenly carried the same signal. Secretary General Chen appeared on screens around the world, broadcasting from his hidden bunker. "People of Earth," he began, his voice calm but determined. "The aliens believe they can conquer us because they think we're weak. They think we'll surrender because our weapons can't penetrate their shields. They think we'll break because they've destroyed our cities. They're wrong." Chen paused, looking directly into the camera. "We're not fighting for buildings or borders. We're fighting for the right to exist as free human beings. We're fighting for our children's future. We're fighting because this is our home and no one, no matter how advanced their technology, has the right to take that from us." The broadcast ended, but its message had been received. In bunkers and hideouts around the world, 6 billion humans heard their leader's words. More importantly, the alien forces monitoring human communications heard them too. On his flagship, Commander Zektar stared at the now dark screen. For the first time since the invasion began, he felt a chill of uncertainty. He had conquered 47 worlds in his career, but he had never encountered anything like this. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "ground forces are requesting permission to begin bombardment of population centers. They say they need to flush out the human resistance." Zektar hesitated. Orbital bombardment would certainly end the guerrilla attacks, but it would also destroy the planet's infrastructure and kill millions of civilians. The Galactic Council preferred conquered worlds to remain productive. not turned into radioactive wastelands. Negative, he decided. Continue ground operations. These humans will break eventually. Every species does. But even as he gave the order, Zektar couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. Something about the way the humans fought, the way they looked at defeat and chose to keep fighting anyway. It was almost like they were enjoying the challenge. Below, in the tunnels beneath New York, Colonel Martinez checked her watch and smiled grimly. The aliens had been on the surface for 6 hours, and they had achieved exactly nothing except walking into empty buildings and chasing shadows. Phase 1 was complete. It was time to show them what humans could do when they really got creative. 3 days after the initial landing, Commander Zektar was discovering that conquering Earth was nothing like the military textbooks had promised. His forces controlled the landing zones and several major buildings, but the humans had made it clear that controlling empty structures meant absolutely nothing. Report, he demanded as his senior staff gathered around the holographic map of Earth. Captain. Thex looked exhausted. His usually pristine uniform was stained with dust and sweat from 3 days of chasing ghosts through empty cities. Sir, we've lost contact with 17 patrol units. Not destroyed, just lost. They report everything normal, then their communications go dead. When we send search teams, we find their equipment neatly stacked in public squares, but no sign of the soldiers. What do you mean, no sign? Zektar's 3 eyes focused intently on his subordinate. Gone, sir. Vanished. No bodies, no blood, no evidence of struggle. It's like they just walked away and forgot to mention it to anyone. The intelligence officer stepped forward nervously. Sir, I've been analyzing human communication intercepts. They're calling it catch and release. They're not killing our soldiers, they're capturing them and then doing something to them. Doing what? We don't know, sir. But when we do find them, they're always discovered wandering in remote areas with no memory of how they got there. Medical scans show they're unharmed, but they can't remember anything after being captured. Zektar felt his confidence beginning to crack. The Vorthak military had procedures for dealing with enemies who fought conventionally, enemies who surrendered, and enemies who fought to the death. They had no procedures for dealing with enemies who captured soldiers just to let them go again. Sir, the communications officer interrupted, we're receiving another broadcast from the human leader. Secretary General Chen appeared on the screen again, but this time he wasn't in his bunker. He was standing in what appeared to be a perfectly normal office building, with sunlight streaming through the windows behind him. Commander Zektar, Chen said, looking directly into the camera, as if he could see through the screen. I thought you should know that your soldiers are safe. We've been taking good care of them. They're confused, of course, but unharmed. We wanted to prove a point. Zektar leaned forward, his claws gripping the edges of his command chair. What point? That you don't understand what you're fighting, Chen replied calmly. You think this is about superior technology? Better weapons, stronger armor, faster ships? You think that because you can destroy our cities, you've defeated us. But you're fighting the wrong war, Commander. The human leader paused, and for a moment his expression became almost pitying. You're fighting a war of conquest. We're fighting a war of survival, and humans have been the best survivors on this planet for 200,000 years. We didn't get to the top of the food chain because we were the strongest or the fastest. We got here because we were the most persistent. The broadcast ended, leaving the bridge of Zektar's flagship in uncomfortable silence. Sir, the tactical officer said quietly, I think we need to reconsider our approach. The humans aren't fighting like any enemy we've encountered before. How so? They're not trying to defeat us, sir. They're trying to exhaust us. Every attack is designed to waste our time and resources. They force us to investigate every shadow, check every building, respond to every false alarm. Our soldiers are getting tired, frustrated, and scared. Zektar's communicator chimed with an incoming message from the Galactic Council. He accepted the transmission with growing dread. High Admiral Korath appeared on the screen, his ancient features stern with disapproval. Commander Zektar, your progress reports have been concerning. The Council expected Earth to be fully pacified within 1 standard week. It has been 3 days and you control nothing but empty buildings. Sir, the humans are employing unconventional tactics. They refuse to engage in direct combat and seem to prefer psychological warfare. Psychological warfare? Korath's voice carried a note of disbelief. Against a species that has conquered half the galaxy? Commander, you're being outmaneuvered by primitives who haven't even achieved faster-than-light travel. With respect, sir, these primitives are proving remarkably creative in their approach to warfare. I don't want creativity reports, Commander. I want results. You have 4 more days to bring this planet under control, or I'll send someone who can. The transmission ended, leaving Zektar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his officers exchanged worried glances. Being replaced by the High Admiral was not a career-enhancing experience. New orders, Zektar announced. Increase patrol frequency. Deploy sensor nets throughout all major population centers. I want every human on this planet tagged and tracked. If they want to play games, we'll change the rules. What Zektar didn't know was that humans had been changing the rules of warfare for millennia. In the tunnels beneath London, Major James Fletcher was explaining this to a group of SAS operatives. The aliens are frustrated, he said, pointing to intercepts of Vorthak communications displayed on his tablet. They're used to enemies who fight according to established patterns. Stand here, shoot there, retreat when overwhelmed. We're not giving them anything to shoot at. Sergeant Williams raised his hand. Sir, what about the prisoners we've been taking? The drugging operation seems to be working, but how long before they figure out what we're doing? Fletcher smiled grimly. That's the beauty of it, Sergeant. They already know we're drugging them. What they don't know is why we keep letting them go. The truth was both simpler and more complex than the aliens suspected. Every captured Vorthak soldier was given a mild sedative, and then subjected to something the human military called cultural immersion. They were shown movies, music, art, and literature. They were fed home-cooked meals and treated with the kind of hospitality that humans showed to lost strangers. The psychological effect was devastating. Vorthak. Society was built on the concept of hierarchical dominance. Strong conquered weak, advanced dominated primitive, order-controlled chaos. But the humans weren't acting like a conquered species. They were acting like hosts. Sir, Sergeant Williams continued, some of the returned prisoners are asking questions about why we're feeding them, why we're showing them kindness, why we're not torturing them for information. And what are our people telling them? The truth, sir, that we don't torture prisoners because it's wrong, that we feed them because they're hungry, that we show them kindness because that's what humans do. Fletcher nodded. The psychological warfare wasn't directed at breaking the enemy's will to fight. It was designed to make them question why they were fighting in the first place. In the captured Vorthak dropship, hidden in an abandoned warehouse in Berlin, Dr. Sarah Kim was conducting her own form of psychological warfare. She had spent 2 days talking with a captured alien pilot, not interrogating him, but simply having conversations about philosophy, art, and the nature of consciousness. I don't understand, the pilot said through the translation device. Your species is clearly intelligent, yet you refuse to surrender to superior force. Your leaders must know they cannot win. Cannot win what? Dr. Kim asked. You assume this is a contest with a clear victory condition. But what if we're not trying to win anything? What if we're just trying to remain ourselves? The pilot's 3 eyes blinked in confusion. But if you cannot win, why continue to resist? Why choose destruction over submission? Because submission means becoming something we're not, she replied simply, and we'd rather die as humans than live as slaves. This concept was so alien to Vorthak, thinking that the pilot actually requested clarification through the translator, convinced there had been an error in the linguistic processing. Back on his flagship, Commander Zektar was receiving reports that only added to his confusion. Sir, the humans have released another 18 of our soldiers, all unharmed, all claiming they were treated well. Any intelligence gathered? That's just it, sir. The humans made no attempt to hide anything from them. They showed our soldiers their hiding places, their supply caches, even their communication equipment. It's like they wanted them to see everything. Zektar stared at the tactical display, trying to understand an enemy that broke every rule of military logic. They captured soldiers and then released them. They revealed their positions and then disappeared before attacks could be launched. They fought fiercely when cornered, but never tried to hold territory they had won. Sir, his intelligence officer said quietly, I have a theory about what the humans are doing. Let's hear it. I think they're trying to demoralize us, sir. Not through fear or intimidation, but through confusion. They're showing our soldiers that humans can be kind, generous, and honorable even to their enemies. They're making our troops question whether this invasion is necessary. Zektar felt a cold realization settling in his stomach. If his officer was right, then the humans weren't just fighting a war of attrition. They were fighting a war for the hearts and minds of his own soldiers, and they might be winning. By the end of the first week, the Vorthak invasion force was experiencing something unprecedented in their military history, an identity crisis. Commander Zektar paced his bridge like a caged predator, watching reports flow in from around the globe that made less sense with each passing hour. "Explain to me again," he said to Captain Thex, "how a squad of our elite warriors was defeated by a group of elderly humans armed with gardening tools." Thex's forearms moved nervously as he consulted his tablet. "Sir, Squad 12 was conducting a routine patrol through a residential area outside London when they encountered resistance from a retirement community. The humans were using makeshift weapons and improvised tactics. And our soldiers retreated? Well, sir, it's complicated. The elderly humans weren't actually trying to kill our soldiers. They were arguing with them, loudly, about everything from proper lawn care to the moral implications of intergalactic conquest. Private Kex reports that one human grandmother lectured him for 2 hours about the importance of good manners and treating guests properly." Zektar's 3 eyes widened. "And this defeated our soldiers how exactly?" "They became confused, sir. Our soldiers are trained to respond to aggression with overwhelming force, but these humans weren't being aggressive. They were being disappointed," Kex said. The grandmother reminded him of his maternal unit back on Vorthak Prime. He couldn't bring himself to raise his weapon against her. The commander sat heavily in his chair. His forces had conquered 47 worlds, faced down warriors who could tear apart armored vehicles with their bare claws, and defeated species with technology that could manipulate gravity itself. But they were being psychologically dismantled by human senior citizens armed with strongly worded opinions. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving another message from the human leadership. This time it's coming from everywhere." The main screen activated, showing not one human face but dozens. Scientists, teachers, farmers, mechanics, doctors, artists, people from every walk of human life, all speaking simultaneously from locations around the globe. "Commander Zektar," they said in unison, their voices creating an eerie harmony. "We have a proposition for you." The screen split into multiple panels, each showing a different human in a different location. A young woman in a laboratory coat spoke first. "We've been studying your technology, your shields, your weapons, your ships. Impressive engineering." An elderly man in farming clothes continued, "But we've also been studying your people, your soldiers, your culture, your reasons for being here." Less impressive reasoning. A middle-aged teacher added, "You've told us that the Galactic Council sent you here to conquer Earth as punishment. Because this assignment was considered beneath a warrior of your stature." Zektar felt his blood run cold. How had they learned about his career problems? The humans continued their coordinated presentation. A mechanic spoke next. "So here's our offer, Commander. Stop trying to conquer us and we'll help you conquer yourselves." "What does that mean?" Zektar found himself asking before he could stop himself. The scientist reappeared. "We've been analyzing your culture through our interactions with your soldiers. You're a species trapped by your own success. You've become so good at conquest that you've forgotten how to do anything else. Your entire civilization is built around hierarchical dominance. But what happens when there's nothing left to dominate?" The farmer picked up the thread. "Your soldiers aren't happy, Commander. They follow orders because they must, but they don't understand why they're here. Half of them have never seen their home world. They're professional warriors in an age when warfare has become meaningless." The teacher concluded, "We're offering to teach you something new. Not how to fight, you already know that. How to build, how to create, how to find meaning in something other than conquest." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Sir," the tactical officer said carefully, "are they actually offering to surrender?" "No," Zektar replied slowly. "I think they're offering to help us surrender." Before anyone could respond to this disturbing thought, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. "Captain," the sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the Earth's solar system. Ships decloaking at the edge of the system." The main display switched to a tactical view of local space. Dozens of vessels were materializing out of nothing, their hulls bearing the insignia of different Galactic Council member species. Kraxi battlecruisers, Tellurian exploration vessels, Nexari diplomatic ships, and others from species Zektar recognized but had never seen working together. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. It's from High Admiral Korath, but he's not alone. The screen showed the interior of what appeared to be a massive conference chamber. High Admiral Korath sat at the center of a semicircle that included representatives from at least 12 different species. Some Zektar recognized as council members, others he had never seen before. Commander Zektar, Korath began, his ancient voice carrying a weight that made the entire bridge crew stand straighter. You have been conducting this invasion for 7 days. In that time, you have achieved no meaningful territorial gains, suffered no combat casualties, and filed the most confusing situation reports in Galactic Council history. Zektar opened his mouth to defend himself, but Korath continued, more importantly, you have discovered something that has forced the Council to convene an emergency session. Commander, the humans have been in contact with us. What? Zektar's voice cracked slightly. A new figure leaned forward, a Tellurian with the characteristic blue skin and enlarged cranium of their species. The humans achieved faster-than-light communication 6 days ago, Commander. Not travel communication. They built a quantum entanglement array out of spare parts and broadcast a message to the council chambers on Nexus Prime. Another alien, this one a crystalline Nexari, spoke with a voice like wind chimes. The message was unprecedented. They did not request aid against your invasion. They did not threaten retaliation. They invited us to Earth for cultural exchange. High Admiral Korath's expression was unreadable. Commander, the humans have done something no conquered species has ever done in the Council's 3,000-year history. They have made us question whether conquest was the right approach. On the bridge, Zektar felt his worldview crumbling around him. Sir, I don't understand. A new voice joined the conversation, Secretary General Chen, appearing in a smaller window within the main display. Commander Zektar, you've been trying to conquer Earth for a week. In that same week, we've been trying to understand why anyone would want to conquer anything. The answer we came up with is that your species, and apparently many others in the galaxy, have forgotten that there are alternatives to dominance. Chen gestured to someone off-screen, and the view expanded to show him standing in what appeared to be a massive underground facility. Human scientists and engineers were working alongside aliens. Real aliens, not Vorthak soldiers, but representatives from the ships that had just decloaked. These representatives came here to study us, Chen explained. They wanted to understand how a species could resist superior technology without resorting to xenophobia or revenge. What they found instead was a species that wanted to understand them. The Tellurian representative spoke again. Commander, in the past week, the humans have shared more cultural information with us than most species exchange in decades of formal diplomacy. They showed us their art, their music, their literature, their history. But more than that, they showed us their capacity for growth. What the Tellurian means, Chen interjected, is that we've proven something important. Intelligence isn't just about building better weapons or faster ships. It's about building better relationships, better understanding, better futures for everyone involved. High Admiral Korath leaned forward. Commander Zektar, you are hereby ordered to stand down your invasion force and prepare for new orders. The Council has voted to classify Earth as a protected cultural site pending further study. Sir, Zektar said weakly, what does that mean for my career? For the first time in the conversation, Korath almost smiled. It means, Commander, that you're about to become part of the first cultural exchange program in Galactic Council history. The humans have requested that you and your soldiers remain on Earth as guests while we figure out what comes next. On his bridge, surrounded by displays showing alien ships from a dozen different species, Commander Zektar realized that the humans had achieved the impossible. They had turned an invasion into a diplomatic revolution, and somehow, despite losing every battle in ways he still didn't understand, Zektar found himself looking forward to finding out what the humans would teach him next. 2 weeks after the failed invasion, Commander Zektar found himself sitting in a human restaurant in New York City, trying to understand how his life had become so completely surreal. Across from him sat Dr. Sarah Kim, the same human psychologist who had been interrogating his captured pilot, and Colonel Sarah Martinez, the Special Forces officer who had been making his soldiers disappear. You're still thinking like a conqueror, Dr. Kim said gently, watching him struggle with a pair of chopsticks. You keep looking for the tactical advantage, the hidden weapon, the secret plan that will make everything make sense in military terms. Zektar set down the chopsticks in frustration. Because there has to be one. Species don't just welcome their invaders to dinner. It's not natural. It's not logical. Colonel Martinez laughed, the sound surprisingly warm. Commander, you've been studying our military capabilities for weeks. What you haven't been studying is our cultural capabilities. We're the species that domesticated wolves into house pets, turned our deadliest predators into companions. We've been welcoming invaders for thousands of years. It's called immigration. But we came to conquer you, Zektar protested. We were going to enslave your population and strip your planet of resources. We know, Dr. Kim replied calmly. And we decided that you needed better hobbies. Through the restaurant window, Zektar could see something that defied every principle of military occupation he had ever learned. Vorthak soldiers were walking through the streets alongside human civilians, not as occupying forces but as tourists. They were taking pictures of landmarks, buying souvenirs, and attempting to communicate with street vendors using hastily improvised translation devices. How? He asked. The question that had been haunting him for weeks. How did you turn an invasion into this? Colonel Martinez smiled. Same way we won the invasion, Commander. We changed the rules. You came here expecting to fight an army. Instead, you found a civilization. And civilizations don't fight armies, they absorb them. Your soldiers aren't prisoners, Dr. Kim added. They're exchange students. Whether they know it or not, they're learning that there are other ways to live, other purposes to serve, other definitions of strength and success. As if summoned by their conversation, Captain Thex appeared at their table, looking both excited and confused. In his forearms he carried what appeared to be art, supplies and several canvases covered in colorful paintings. Commander, he said in accented English the Vorthak had been learning human languages with impressive speed. I must report something. Unusual. What now? Zektar asked wearily. I have been creating things, sir. The humans introduced me to something called painting. I have made pictures of our homeworld, of the fleet, of the places we have conquered. But also, new things. Things that exist only in my imagination. Thex showed them one of his canvases. A swirling landscape in blues and purples that somehow managed to capture the feeling of homesickness and wonder at the same time. Sir, Thex continued, I think I understand now why the humans resisted us. We came here to take something from them. But they had something we didn't even know we were missing. Which was what? The ability to create instead of just conquering. To build instead of just taking. To imagine things that don't exist yet and then make them real. Dr. Kim nodded approvingly. Captain Thex has been attending art classes at the local community college. He's quite talented. Art classes? Zektar's voice rose slightly. We're an invasion force, not cultural tourists? Are you? Colonel Martinez asked pointedly. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like the invasion is over and you lost. The question now is what you're going to do with the rest of your life. Before Zektar could respond, his communicator chimed with an incoming message from orbit. The holographic display showed High Admiral Korath, but he wasn't calling from his flagship. He was standing in what appeared to be a human laboratory, wearing what looked suspiciously like a white lab coat. Commander Zektar, Korath said, and his ancient voice carried a note of excitement that Zektar had never heard before. I have remarkable news. The humans have agreed to share their scientific databases with the Council. Their approach to research is revolutionary, sir. They collaborate, Commander. Instead of competing for resources and recognition, their scientists work together across international boundaries, sharing information freely. They've made more technological progress in the last century than some Council species have achieved in millennia, not because they're more intelligent, but because they refuse to let politics interfere with discovery. Korath held up a device that Zektar didn't recognize. This is a human invention called a smartphone. It contains more computing power than our standard tactical systems, but they don't use it for warfare. They use it to share pictures of their food and videos of small animals doing amusing things. Sir, I'm not sure I understand the significance. The significance, Commander, is that the humans have proven that intelligence without aggression is not weakness. It's evolution. They've shown us that cooperation produces better results than conquest, and now the Council wants to learn from them. The transmission ended, leaving Zektar staring at the now empty space where the hologram had been. "Your admiral seems excited," Dr. Kim observed. "He should be," Colonel Martinez added. "We've just revolutionized galactic politics. For the first time in Council history, a first contact situation has resulted in mutual cultural exchange instead of one-sided conquest." "But we had superior technology," Zektar said weakly. "Superior firepower, superior numbers, and we had superior pizza," Dr. Kim replied with a straight face. "Seriously, Commander, when was the last time your soldiers had a really good meal that somebody made because they wanted to, not because they had to?" Zektar thought about this. Vorthak military rations were nutritionally complete and efficiently delivered, but he couldn't remember anyone ever describing them as enjoyable. "The point," Colonel Martinez continued, "is that you've been measuring strength in all the wrong ways. Yes, you can destroy our cities, but can you create anything as beautiful as the cities you'd be destroying? Yes, you can defeat our armies, but can you inspire the kind of loyalty that makes people willing to die for an idea? Can you make someone laugh?" Dr. Kim added. "Can you comfort someone who's afraid? Can you teach a child something new? Can you create something that will make the universe more beautiful than it was before you existed?" Zektar found himself thinking about Captain Thex and his paintings, about the Vorthak soldiers he'd seen taking pictures with human children, about the reports he'd been receiving of his troops volunteering to help with reconstruction projects in the areas they had initially occupied. "This is still highly irregular," he said, but his protest sounded weak even to himself. "Everything worth doing is irregular at first," Dr. Kim replied. "The question is whether you're brave enough to try something new." Through the restaurant window, Zektar watched a group of Vorthak soldiers helping a human family move furniture into a new apartment. One of the aliens was carefully carrying a potted plant, handling it with the same precision he would use for military equipment, but with an entirely different expression on his face. "What happens now?" Zektar asked. "Now," Colonel Martinez said, "you get to decide what kind of person you want to be. For the first time in your career, you're not following orders or executing conquest protocols. You're just here, free to choose what to do with your time, your skills, your life." "I don't know how to do that," Zektar admitted. "Neither did we," Dr. Kim said kindly. "That's what makes it an adventure." As the sun set over New York City, Commander Zektar realized that the humans had achieved something no military force in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had won a war without fighting it, defeated an enemy without destroying them, and conquered a superior force without firing a shot. They had done it by refusing to accept that conquest was the only option, that strength could only be measured in terms of destruction, that intelligence could only be proven through dominance. They had done it by being impossibly and inexplicably kind, and somehow, sitting in a restaurant eating food he couldn't pronounce while discussing philosophy with the people he had been sent to enslave, Zektar found himself thinking that maybe the humans had been right all along. Maybe there was a better way to live. 6 months after the day that would later be called the invitation instead of the invasion, Commander Zektar stood before the full assembly of the Galactic Council on Nexus Prime, but he wasn't there as a military officer giving a standard conquest report. He was there as Earth's first alien ambassador, preparing to deliver testimony that would change the course of galactic civilization. The massive chamber fell silent as he approached the speaker's platform. Representatives from hundreds of species watched him with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism to outright hostility. Many of them still couldn't understand how a primitive species like humanity had managed to not only resist the Vorthak, but actually convince them to switch sides. "Honored representatives," Zektar began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems, "I stand before you today not as a conqueror, but as a student. For the past 6 months, I have been learning from the humans of Earth, and what I have learned has fundamentally changed my understanding of what it means to be intelligent." A murmur ran through the assembly. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "When I first arrived at Earth," Zektar continued, "I expected to find a typical pre-space civilization, divided, primitive, easily overwhelmed by superior technology. What I found instead was a species that had developed something we had never encountered: the ability to turn conflict into cooperation, enemies into allies, and invasion into invitation. High Counselor Vexani, a tall insectoid Craxi, leaned forward. Commander, are you suggesting that the Council's expansion policies are somehow flawed? I'm suggesting, Honored Counselor, that they are incomplete. Zektar activated a holographic display that showed images from Earth, humans and aliens working together in laboratories, Vorthak soldiers teaching alien children about their homeworlds, mixed species teams collaborating on engineering projects. The humans introduced us to a concept they call win-win scenarios. Instead of conquest resulting in one species dominating another, cooperation results in both species becoming stronger than either could be alone. Impossible, declared Representative Thokmar from the warlike Bendari Confederation. Strength comes from dominance. Weakness comes from submission. There is no middle ground. With respect, Representative Thokmar, that's exactly what I thought 6 months ago. Zektar changed the display to show statistical charts. These are productivity measurements from Earth since our arrival. Scientific advancement, technological innovation, artistic creation, even agricultural output, all have increased exponentially since we began working with humans instead of against them. The chamber erupted in surprised chatter. Several representatives demanded to examine the data more closely. Furthermore, Zektar continued, raising his voice above the noise, my soldiers report higher satisfaction ratings, better mental health assessments, and improved performance indicators than they have had in their entire military careers, not because they've conquered something, but because they've created something. High Admiral Koreth, who had been watching from the senior officers section, stood to address the assembly. I can confirm the commander's report. The cultural exchange program on Earth has produced results we never anticipated. Our soldiers aren't just happy. They're discovering talents and interests they never knew they had. And what of military readiness? Demanded General Crix from the hegemony worlds. Have these cultural exchanges compromised their fighting ability? Koreth smiled, an expression that startled many who knew the ancient warrior. Actually, their combat effectiveness has improved dramatically. Humans have been teaching them something called asymmetric warfare and creative problem-solving. Our forces are now capable of tactical innovations that would have been impossible under standard military doctrine. A new voice cut through the assembly, Secretary General Chen, appearing via quantum communication link from Earth. The sight of a human addressing the Galactic Council for the first time in history caused another stir among the representatives. Honored members of the Council, Chen said, his voice calm but carrying the weight of speaking for his entire species. We come before you today not as conquered subjects or as conquerors, but as partners. We believe that the galaxy's greatest strength lies not in any single species' dominance, but in the diversity of perspectives and abilities that cooperation makes possible. Humans speak of cooperation, interrupted Counselor Vexani. But what can you offer that we cannot achieve through our existing systems? Chen smiled. Counselor, in the past 6 months, joint human-alien research teams have solved technological problems that individual species had been working on for decades. We've developed new medical treatments, improved space drive efficiency by 30%, and created art forms that neither species could have imagined alone. The holographic display shifted to show a stunning visual, a massive space station under construction in Earth's orbit, its design incorporating architectural elements from dozens of different species. Humans worked alongside Vorthak, Tellurians, Nixari, and others, their combined efforts creating something beautiful and functional that transcended any single species' capabilities. This is the the interspecies space station, Chen continued. It's not a military installation or a resource extraction facility. It's a research center, an art gallery, a cultural exchange hub, and a symbol of what becomes possible when beings choose cooperation over conquest. Representative Thokmar stood angrily. This is nonsense. The galaxy has been stable under the current system for 3,000 years. Why should we abandon proven methods for untested idealism? Because, said a new voice from the chamber's entrance, the current system is failing. Every head turned to see High Counselor Prime Zeftos himself entering the chamber. As the elected leader of the Galactic Council, his presence meant this session had become far more significant than anyone had expected. Honored Prime, Counselor Vexani said, rising with the rest of the assembly. We did not expect. I know, Zeftos interrupted. his ancient voice carrying across the silent chamber. "I came because I have been watching the Earth situation with great interest, and because I have received some troubling reports from our frontier regions." The Prime took his place at the center of the assembly and activated his own holographic display. It showed a star map of the galaxy with numerous red indicators marking areas of conflict. In the past 6 months, while we have been debating the Earth situation, 17 frontier worlds have declared independence from the Council, not through military rebellion, but through something much more dangerous. They have stopped believing that conquest-based governance serves their interests. A shocked silence fell over the chamber. The human concept of soft power, the ability to influence through attraction rather than coercion, has spread beyond Earth. Species throughout the galaxy are beginning to question whether submission to strength is truly the only viable social structure. Prime Zeftos turned to address Commander Zektar directly. "Commander, you have spent 6 months observing human society. In your professional military opinion, is their approach to governance sustainable?" Zektar thought carefully before answering. "Honored Prime, human society is remarkably resilient. They have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and natural disasters that would have destroyed less adaptable species. Their strength comes not from avoiding conflict, but from their ability to recover from it and emerge stronger than before." "And their military capabilities?" "Terrifying, sir, not because of their technology, but because of their creativity. They approach warfare the same way they approach everything else, by refusing to accept that there's only one way to do something. An enemy that can adapt faster than you can plan is almost impossible to defeat. But they chose not to use those capabilities against us," observed High Admiral Korath. "Instead, they used them to make us question why we wanted to fight in the first place." Prime Zeftos nodded slowly. "The Council faces a choice, representatives. We can continue with our traditional expansion policies and risk watching the galaxy fragment into independent systems that no longer respect our authority. Or we can learn from the humans and evolve our approach to governance." "What exactly are you proposing?" asked Councillor Vexani. "I'm proposing," the Prime said, "that we accept Earth's offer of a galaxy-wide cultural exchange program, that we transform the Council from an organization based on conquest and tribute into one based on cooperation and mutual benefit." The chamber erupted in debate, with representatives arguing passionately on both sides of the issue. But Zektar noticed something interesting. Even those who opposed the idea were arguing about how to implement change, not whether change was necessary. The humans had done something unprecedented in galactic history. They had made an entire civilization question its most fundamental assumptions about power, strength, and the nature of intelligent society. And somehow, Zektar realized as he watched the greatest governing body in the galaxy engage in actual democratic debate for the first time in centuries, they were going to win this argument too, not through force or coercion, but through the simple, radical idea that everyone was better off when everyone was better off. It was, he thought, the most human thing imaginable. 5 years after the failed invasion that became the greatest diplomatic revolution in galactic history, former Commander Zektar, now Director Zektar of the Interspecies Cultural Exchange Program, stood in his office aboard the massive space station orbiting Earth. Through his window, he could see ships from 47 different species docked at the station's ports, their crews engaged in the kind of peaceful cooperation that would have been unimaginable when he first arrived in Earth's solar system. His desk chimed with an incoming message from the Galactic Council chambers on Nexus Prime. The holographic display showed High Councillor Prime Zeftos, but the elderly leader looked different, younger somehow despite his advanced age. The chronic stress lines that had marked his features for decades had faded, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like contentment. "Director Zektar," the Prime said, his voice carrying a warmth that had developed over the years of implementing what historians were already calling the Great Reformation. "I have news from the Outer Rim territories. Good news, I hope. The best kind. The Argonian border conflicts have been resolved, not through military intervention, but through cultural mediation. A team of human anthropologists, Tellurian philosophers, and Vorthak engineers worked together to address the underlying resource distribution issues that had been causing the fighting." Zektar smiled, still amazed by how natural that expression had become. The humans always said that most conflicts were really just communication problems in disguise. Indeed. And speaking of the humans, the Prime's expression became more serious. The Council has reached a decision regarding Earth's petition for full membership. Zektar leaned forward, his three eyes focusing intently on the display. This had been a contentious issue for months. Earth's rapid integration into galactic society had exceeded every precedent, but many Council members still struggled with accepting a species that had never been properly conquered. The vote was unanimous, the Prime announced. Earth has been granted full Council membership, with all rights and privileges thereof. Secretary General Chen will be inaugurated as Earth's representative next month. Unanimous? Zektar couldn't hide his surprise. Even the Bendari Confederation voted in favor. Especially the Bendari Confederation. It seems that humans introduced their warriors to something called competitive sports and martial arts tournaments. Representative Thakmar reports that his people haven't been this entertained in centuries. They've officially requested human coaches for their military training programs. Zektar laughed, the sound echoing through his office. The humans have a saying, if you can't beat them, join them. I think they've managed to convince everyone else to join them instead. There's more, the Prime continued. The Council has also approved the humans' proposal for the Galactic Peace Corps. Volunteer teams of mixed-species civilians will be deployed to resolve conflicts through cultural exchange, technological sharing, and what the humans call radical empathy. Military conflicts resolved by civilians armed with nothing but good intentions and cultural sensitivity, Zektar mused. A year ago, I would have called that the most naive proposal I'd ever heard. And now? Now I know it will probably work better than anything we've tried in the past 3,000 years. The transmission ended, leaving Zektar alone with his thoughts. He walked to his window and looked down at Earth, the blue-green world that had somehow managed to conquer the galaxy without firing a shot. His door chimed, and Dr. Sarah Kim entered, carrying a tablet and wearing the expression of someone who had just discovered something fascinating. Zektar, she said, they had long since dispensed with military formalities. I have the final results from the 5-year impact study. I'm almost afraid to ask. Galactic productivity is up 300%. Interspecies conflicts are down 94%. Scientific advancement has accelerated exponentially. Artists from 17 different species have created art forms that didn't exist 5 years ago. And overall reported happiness levels across all Council species have reached historic highs. Zektar stared at the data scrolling across her tablet. All because we stopped trying to conquer each other? All because humans taught us that cooperation isn't weakness, it's multiplication. When species work together, they don't just add their capabilities, they multiply them exponentially. And the military implications? Dr. Kim smiled. That's the beautiful irony. The galaxy is now militarily stronger than it's ever been, not because we've built better weapons, but because we've eliminated most of the reasons to use them. When everyone benefits from the current system, no one has an incentive to overthrow it. A new voice joined the conversation as Captain Thex entered the office, his forearms carrying what had become a familiar sight, art supplies and a finished canvas. His paintings had become famous throughout the galaxy, selling for enormous sums that he donated to refugee assistance programs. Director, Thex said in fluent English, I wanted to show you my latest work before it goes to the exhibition on Craxi Prime. The painting showed a scene from Earth's surface, humans and aliens of various species working together in a garden, their different physiologies and abilities complementing each other as they tended plants from a dozen different worlds. The composition somehow managed to capture not just the visual scene, but the emotional resonance of cooperation itself. It's magnificent, Thex, Zektar said honestly. What are you calling it? What we found when we stopped looking for enemies, geek, Thex replied. The humans taught me that the most powerful art tells a story that changes how people see the world. Dr. Kim nodded approvingly. That's very human. They believe that changing how people think is the first step to changing how they act. Speaking of changing how people think, Zektar said, I received some interesting news today. Earth has been granted full Council membership. Thex's painting nearly fell from his arms in excitement. Truly? The humans are now equal partners in galactic governance? More than equal, I suspect, given how quickly their ideas are spreading. I wouldn't be surprised if human philosophy becomes the dominant influence in council policy within a generation. And that doesn't worry you? Dr. Kim asked. A species achieving that much influence so quickly? Zektar considered the question seriously. No, he said finally. Because human influence isn't about dominance, it's about invitation. They don't force their ideas on others. They make their ideas so attractive that others choose to adopt them. Soft conquest, Thex observed. They win by making their enemies want to become their friends. Exactly. And the thing about friends is that they're allies by choice, not by force. That makes them much more reliable than subjects or slaves. Through the office windows, they could see a shuttle approaching from Earth's surface. It carried the latest batch of cultural exchange participants, beings from across the galaxy who came to Earth to study human approaches to conflict resolution, creative problem-solving, and social organization. You know what the strangest part is? Dr. Kim said, watching the shuttle dock. The humans still don't think they've done anything extraordinary. They just approached an invasion the same way they approach everything else, as a problem to be solved rather than a battle to be won. They turned warfare into social work, Thex added. Instead of defeating their enemies, they rehabilitated them. Zektar nodded, thinking about his own transformation from military commander to cultural ambassador. They saw a galaxy full of species trapped by their own success, locked into patterns of behavior that no longer served them. And they offered us something we didn't even know we wanted, the chance to be better than we were. As the three of them watched ships from dozens of worlds move peacefully around the space station, Zektar reflected on the most profound lesson the humans had taught the galaxy. That true strength wasn't the ability to destroy your enemies, but the wisdom to transform them into friends. The humans had been right from the beginning. They weren't weak because they chose cooperation over conquest. They were so strong that they could afford to be kind, and somehow in being kind, they had accomplished what no military force in galactic history had ever achieved. They had united the galaxy not through fear, but through hope. In the end, it turned out that the meaning of war wasn't about winning battles or conquering enemies. The meaning of war was learning when not to fight it at all. The humans had taught them that the greatest victory was making war itself obsolete, and as Zektar looked out at a galaxy where former enemies worked together as friends, where art flourished alongside science, where diversity was celebrated rather than eliminated, he realized that this was what peace actually looked like. It looked like everyone winning. It looked remarkably human.